Yep. Hello, everybody. This is Henry Fleischer here with the Cannabis Dispatch, also the CBD Business Networking Group on Facebook. And my guest today is Russell Orsborn. So, Russell, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I've been growing cannabis since 1973. Uh, so I've kind of been around in that industry for a while. I grew up in Canada most of my life, moved to the States here in the last 20 years. Uh, Worked in the software industry in the 80s and 90s for a company called Autodesk. They make AutoCAD, if you ever heard of that. Uh, but mostly my life has been about growing cannabis or hemp. First time I grew it was 1973. I swam out to a river in the middle of a big flood in the spring and planted it in on an island, hoping that the roots would follow the water down as the flood resided, and went back in the fall and looked for the plants and startled myself when I realized the plants I was pushing aside to look for the plants were the plants.
Uh-huh.
So ever since then, I've been quite interested in growing it, not just as a consumer, but to grow it. So I've worked with a number of companies in British Columbia, in Washington State, and here in Colorado. Last few years, I've been growing AOSCA certified hemp seed for grain and fiber. I worked with the CBDRX functional remedy guys for a while down in Pueblo, setting up their clone program. So I've been around pretty much getting busy for the last number of years.
So you mentioned in 1973 it was when you grew your first cannabis plant. When was it
Yes.
that you grew your first commercial for commercial purposes?
Commercial was probably about 2 or 3 years later. Just I'd hate, small scale. Friends that I knew, it was still illegal in Canada, pardon me.
Oh yeah.
But that's kind of where a few of us came from. But yeah, commercially, small was probably a couple years, but really at scale was probably 4 or 5 years later. We did a 5 by 7 kilometer grow in the forest in southern British Columbia. That's about maybe 3 by 5 miles, 3 by 4 miles, something like that. So that was my first commercial enterprise in the far side. First legal side of that was also in Canada for some people in a very small town called Rock Creek. They're now the largest marijuana grower, I think, in British Columbia. We kind of worked with them at the beginning and a couple of times. So yeah, commercially was in British Columbia in early 80s, probably.
Oh wow. Oh, I'm curious too, like at that time, what were the biggest challenges you faced growing it at such a large scale at that time? I know with the legality, but were there issues too where like law enforcement were to find the plants?
Oh, sure, RCMP. I can't go into the details of anything,
Oh, of course,
but
yeah.
but that was our biggest concern was that problem, sure, or hunters finding it and telling the police. But besides that, it was because it was out in the middle of nowhere. We had logistics to deal with, such as water, how to get water to everything, how to get food to everybody. We had a crew of about 30 people camped out in the woods for months on end, so we had to feed people and rotate them in and out so that they didn't lose their minds out in the bush with mosquitoes and you know uh, bugs and animals and stuff. So we had logistics of making the plants happen. We had the logistics of taking care of people. And at the time, I wasn't even 20 years old at the time, so it was a pretty big enterprise to take on. But it was
Oh,
a blast, actually.
oh yeah, I'm sure. There's definitely like a lot of challenge, much different nowadays too, with it being legal. So what would you say too, like if you had to do things differently from when you started, what would you do differently, knowing what you know now?
What would I do differently back then?
Yeah, like, yeah. If you had to like go back in time with everything you know now.
There'd be a few things on the nutrient side. How much water we gave them? I think we gave them too much water. If we didn't worry about pests or pathogens. We just focused on nutrients and water. And we were young. All of us were young. Most of us were just out of high school people I knew. So we were everything,
Oh yeah.
just about. But yeah, definitely nutrients and water. We probably use too much water. That's a
Oh
big one.
well.
That's really
Oh,
easy to do.
oh, so that's good to know too for anybody listening too, who's trying to grow some plants that overwatering it could affect the quality.
Sure, that's an easy one to
No, yeah.
fall into.
Oh, it's saying too. Yeah, you're making sure too the right nutrients are in the soil. Definitely another one. Well,
Definitely.
yeah. And what would you say is like the most challenging part about being in this business in 2021?
The people. The plant is pretty easy to grow. I've never found it difficult to grow. It's difficult to grow perfectly, but to be honest, it's the people in this industry. And I have to be careful how I say this too much, but when back in those days there was a code between everybody because everybody was kind of nervous about the police, so we were a little
Yep.
closer bonded to each other as individuals. We depended on each other as even as just separate people that didn't even know each other. And nowadays, the industry now, uh, there's a lot of fly-by-nighters. There's a lot of people who pass themselves off as, yeah, I know exactly what I'm doing. And then you ask them, okay, well, where did you do this last? What was the last project you worked on? And they can't come up with a thing other than talk. So, the finance side, I'm sure people getting into this for the first time, one thing they'll want to know is trust the people you work with if you can. Uh, Work with people when you get started in this industry that want to look after you, want to help you get through this. I guess it would be, yeah, be careful with the people you work with. Check into the people that you're going to work with. Find out what you can about them. Find out from past employees or past clients, what they're like. Are they good to work with? Are they good guys? Are they bad guys, etc. You know.
Oh, I got you. And
But regulations are pretty straightforward, to be honest. The plant's easy to grow. I can access. Logistics are not a problem anymore. Uh, so yeah, it's pretty easy to grow these days.
oh, got it. So if there was like if a cannabis company was to choose between you and three other people to consult on their grow operations, why should they give you a try first?
I guess, why would they give me a try? Well, if you talk to the people I've dealt with in the past, their responses typically don't ask Russ a question you don't want the answer to, even if you don't like the answer.
Hmm.
So I'm pretty blunt and honest with people, whether they're paying me or not. It doesn't really matter. That's just the way things go, the way things are. So I'm interested in the end result. So I'm going to tell people the truth, whether they like it or not. That's one point. Two, I've been doing this for more than 45 years at this point in my life. It's kind of what I do. It's what I've been doing. Everything else I've done in my life has been to support this career. Even when I worked in the software industry, it was specifically to forward so I could continue in this industry.
Oh, got you.
Uh, so I guess experience is a big chunk of that. I've seen everything from outdoors, indoors, 500-acre hemp seed projects. I've been around for a while. I guess probably is the biggest one. Experience.
Oh, yeah, makes sense too. What's the number one way you currently get new clients as well?
Pardon me.
So, like, what's the number one way you get new clients to
What's
work
the
with?
number one way I try to get to compliance?
No, new clients. Like, for
Oh, new clients.
yeah, sorry about that.
Actually, that's probably the weakest part of me for sure. I'm not particularly that great at sales, which selling yourself to clients is the big one. So yeah, that's the big one for me is getting in front of people and talking to them.
Oh,
If I can get in front of people and talk to them and say, fire away with questions, let's get at her, sort of thing. Uh, I can talk to people, but for me, I'm kind of old school. I'm used to picking up the phone and calling people. And then, nowadays, you call people, if they don't know who you are, they don't answer the phone. So the texting and email and those kind of programs, I used them, but I kind of focus on LinkedIn and Facebook as platforms, um, and mostly word of mouth, talking to people. I know a few people in the industry over the last 40 some years.
No, I got you too. So like I know that's like segueing into that. You mentioned about Facebook and LinkedIn. So like what role has the internet played in your business becoming more prevalent?
Mostly information, knowing what actually is going on in separate groups in other places, in other countries. Sorry, I'm waving my hand in front of the camera. Even in other countries, I really want to know what's going on in parts of Europe, for example. Have been they have all kinds of fiber equipment, fiber processing equipment left over from when the Russians drew back from the Soviet bloc countries, and they left incredible amounts of fiber processing equipment that Romania, Bulgaria, and other countries are making use of. They're very simple. They were built like tanks. What parts you can't find, which may be a lot, you can actually make because they're fairly straightforward. So for me, the internet, LinkedIn, Facebook, all of them has been an information source to tell me what the rest of the world is doing, and in the process, establishing in my mind as a country, are we moving further behind? Are we catching up? Are we keeping pace? Where are we with the rest of the world, and in particular, what countries are doing what? So that's been a big part of it. Is that it also allows me to talk to cultivar sources or seed sources anywhere in the world. I can talk to anybody: Italy, France, Poland, Spain, parts of North Africa. I can talk to anybody in the world because we can talk on the internet, and I can see what they're doing. I can look at their trials data, including trials data from all our universities here in America, because just about every university that's got an ag school in it is doing trials regularly. And for those who are interested, that's a really fast way to start some research on what cultivars work where.
Oh, of course. I was gonna say too. I seen Italy being it's producing a lot of hemp now too. So interesting to see what twist each country will have on hemp production.
You bet.
If it will be.
In particular, Italy is maybe not in the forefront, but they have a couple of fiber cultivars that are showing relatively good levels of CBD also. And frankly, myself, I see that as a big future in the process of moving from greenhouses and outdoor horticulture grows for THC and hemp. We went back to row cropping concepts to produce seed for farmers. And what I saw in that process, I grew for the Institute in Poland and Bialobreski and Hanola, two Polish varieties. And the Hanola was a grain variety. And what first made me really look at this seriously was that it produces a lot of seed. And the reason is it produces a lot of flower. This hemp plant flowers from about 1.5 feet off the ground, 18 to 20 inches, right to the top. There's no 1 foot flower. There's 4 and 5 and 6 foot flowers. In fact, on my website page, the picture of me is standing in front of that field when they're only, I'm 6'1", so the plants are about 6 feet tall, and they've got 4 foot flowers on them already. So now if you had, in grain, we plant 20, 25 pounds of seed per acre. So at 30,000, you might have 750,000 plants or something in the field. For fiber, we're up in the 50 to 60 pounds, maybe higher. With the same number, we might have 1.5 million to 1.8 million plants per acre in the field in row cropping. And if that produced, 4 ounces minimum of a plant, which it probably produces more, but let's say 4 ounces, you had 6 million ounces per acre. If your CBD level was somewhere in the 2 to 6 points, that's a lot of biomass to pull CBD out of, and it's really cheap to grow. You put it in the ground and you water it, and you have a few nutrients if you're using pivots or something like that. So to me, the future is grain and CBD and fiber and CBD, because they both grow at scale. They're easy to plant. You don't have to take care of them. You don't have to to put the labor you do into horticulture.
Got it. I was gonna ask you too, is there a big difference between growing hemp for industrial purposes, like for fabrics and so on, versus the one that's used for to derive CBD oil, the flower to smoke, and so on?
Sure, you bet. Right now, one is horticulture.
Yep.
Anywhere from 800 plants to 2,500 plants, depending on whoever's model they're using, and they're usually using drip lines or something along this line. And they're looking. To me, that's a horticulture project, and it's getting to the point where it's pretty well perfected. Everybody knows what you have to do when you have to do it. Most people's decisions these days are more based on what genetics am I going to use in that model. Whereas when we go to the grain and fiber side, we're planting it with drills, farm equipment. We're putting it in the ground with farm equipment. We're using farm equipment like pivots to water it and drop the nutrients on it. We're harvesting it with something like, say, for example, if you're harvesting grain, you'd be using gleaners. The 78, 79 series work pretty good. Old stuff, but there's new equipment coming out. But yeah, farm equipment. So we're using different equipment and we're using less labor.
Oh wow.
And frankly, going to scale is fairly easy because most farmers already have the equipment in the land to do that and the know-how how to plant it. And seeing as how when you put it in the ground like that, it needs about the same nutrients as a good crop of corn or wheat. They're already kind of geared to do this. So they have a lot of the tools. What they don't have is the know-how. And right now they're going through a big learning curve to exchange this plant for corn or whatever they were growing before that.
Oh, cool. And for like say like 6 months to a year down the line, where would you like to see the business at?
Wow, where I would like to see it at?
Yeah.
I would like to see a couple things happen. One is the farming concept needs some help from the Department of Agriculture and the insurance companies and a few others, so that normal farmers who are used to applying for FSA loans and all the things that come with crops like AOSCA certified seed, so that if they buy the seed or clones or however they're going to put this in the ground, they have someone that they can depend on, that when they get ripped off, that they have somewhere to go. Because right now, in the normal farming world, if you buy seeds through the AOSCA program, and that is basically in every state, it's a seed certification program that basically creates labels that say this is what it is. It has this germination rate, it has this genetic purity rate, and maybe a couple of other things, a lot number, sources, and a few things. But once AOSCA certifies that label to be put on a bag of seed, and that seed shows up that says 93% germination rate, and the germination rate is 20%, they have a venue to go through to deal with that. Right now, it's just, well, too bad. If you bought bad seed and didn't have a way to germ test it before you bought it, which is quite common in this industry, there are people out there who've spent millions. I've talked to people who spent several $1 million on seeds and this is on the CBD side, mind you, and they got so many males that they just plowed the crop under,
Oh, I
and
got
so there's some legalities that need to be better finished, more detailed, and to protect the farmer, I guess is what I want to say. I'd like to see more protection for farmers in the purchase of their seed or clones or whatever they're going to use. And then on the other side, I would like to see more protection for farmers when they sign a contract with somebody who says, I'll buy your crop at the end of the year, and then they grow the crop, they put the money in, they go, okay, here I got this crop sitting here waiting for you, just like you said, and they go, oh, I don't have enough money. We can't buy your product. And then the farmer sits down and goes, okay, now what do I do with my product? And I think if you go out into the industry, you talk to 1,000 farmers, you'll find 500 of them are still have every single bit of product they grew last year and maybe the year before, right?
Yep.
Because a lot of them thought that all you had to do was grow it, sign a piece of paper that said, this guy over here will buy it, and that's all you need to do. Okay, trustworthy, farmers, yeah, let's go. Comes to farm, they spent all their money, they harvest their product, and that guy's nowhere to be found. That person, I should say, gender non-specific. That person is nowhere to be found, and the cash is nowhere to be found. So now you have a farmer who not only was looking for something that maybe save his farm, help him keep the ground under his feet his. Now suddenly he's got a crop he can't sell, and the bank is calling, and so is everybody else. Everybody else with a bill is calling him up saying, hey, remember you were going to pay me all this money after you sold your product? There's a lot of farmers in America right now sitting on their product. I know a guy, I won't say his name or location, who's sitting on 500 acres of CBG product.
Whoa.
And isn't going to grow a thing this year because he can't sell it because it's so flooded with everybody else is selling the same product. He's not even going to grow anything this year after such a big commitment last year. Yeah. He's, I talked to him about every once a week the last little while. He's out. He's done.
Yeah. Who's his ideal buyer though? That's the point. He wants to get.
Well, the ideal buyer was the guy that handed him a contract and said, sign here and I'll give you this much per pound, et cetera. Yeah. So he went out and did this, and then he came back and lo and behold, those people don't even exist anymore. Ooh. No phone number, nothing. No, I think that is so common in this industry right now.
No, I think that's what happens anytime an industry is rising. You have those let's say imposters come by, which are just trying to make that quick buck. But that's not the case. It's you have to know everything about the industry. You have to really like it and have it mission driven. So that's just really unfortunate.
It's not unpredictable. When I was in the software industry, I started in 1981 or 1982. And very quickly, people could see there was a lot of money there, lots of money. And it was you'd go to conferences and, at the time I worked for Computer World when I first started in the industry. And I remember after a few years, going to the big conferences like Comdex and things like that, you could literally almost call out, look, see all the shark fins? There's blood in the water, right? In other words, there's money, and here come the sharks. And I see exactly the same thing. I just went to NOCO, 2 weeks ago here in Colorado, in Denver. And I'll tell you that I used to watch the parade of consultants as entertainment value to me. But now I'm starting to see the problems they're causing people. Misinformation, poor advice, flat out not knowing the difference. There's a broad spectrum of people in the consulting business in this industry, and it ranges from people who were working as AT&T tech support last week to guys who have been in the business for 40 or 50 years. So it's a little difficult for people who are new in this industry to walk in and know the difference and see the difference, because this business puts a lot of flash out there.
No, yeah, I agree with you too. So yeah, what advice would you give to somebody who's trying to enter the industry?
In which role, as looking for work coming out of, say, university, graduating with a plant sciences degree or something?
Yeah, well, let's say for that one, and then somebody who's trying to be involved with the business.
Well, I kind of went through this. Yeah. When I worked with the guys down in Pueblo, we went to the universities, and here in Colorado, I went to the Colorado State University and talked to several professors who were teaching plant sciences, etc., and asked them flat out, who are your people who are the top people and want to be in hemp? Who are they? Give me a list, and if you'd like, I'll put them to work this summer. And that's exactly what we did. We hired them as interns. That was about 5 or 6 years ago. Most of them still work at the same company. Now they have houses and mortgages and wives and kids and all those things that people have. but that would be one entry point is while you're still in school, before you graduate, approach some of these companies, tell them what your plans are. Tell them if you want to do an internship, tell them that. You know, be blunt. Don't beat around the bush. Be forthright. Tell them what you want to do. And part of the reason for that is that most of the people that I talk to in this industry who are new to it, that don't have a job or a business that they're starting, the first, I hear a lot of the same things. I'm not sure what I want to do. Well, you know, that's a big piece right there. I'll have to tell you, my mom always told me, you can do anything you want to, but you have to want to and you have to go after it. So part of that is that decision is, what is it you want to do? Do you want to grow plants in a greenhouse? Do you want to work in propagation, cut clones? Do you want to work outside? Do you want to work inside? Do you want to work for someone else? Do you want to be self-employed? There's a huge gamut of questions that people kind of need to go through, just like anybody else entering any career path. What do you want to do? How much do you want to get paid? Where do you want to do this? Who do you want to work for? Do you want to work for the small outfit over here who has 2 or 3 people and you play a big role and get a lot of attention, learn a lot? Do you want to work in a company that has 1,000 people where you might just be another dot in the sentence with very little attention paid to you, with very little impact? But sometimes they spend a little more money in those big companies on training. Sometimes they'll even pay you to go take training. So there's a lot of questions that person has to ask themselves first, and one of them is, what do I want to do? Because no one's going to offer you a job that you don't ask for. If you tell them, I don't know what I can do, tell them what you're good at. Are you good at math? Are you good at, are you physically capable of working in the field, picking stuff up, moving around? Do you like that kind of stuff? So yeah, my advice to people coming out of school or entering into the market is, number one, decide what you want to do. And if you went to school, you probably already have a rough idea. But make a decision on that. Establish a start point by doing that, and then approach the companies who do that. Look them up on the internet. They're all out there. I mean, that's the other part of the internet. You can do research on every one of these companies out there. Find out what they do, and find out, do I like this company? Do I want to be a part of that? Because what if I like it and I go to work there and they pay me so well, I stay there for 5 years? Well, you know what? You're part of that company now. You're part of the face, and you're part of whatever culture they put out there, good or bad. So
Oh,
there's a few things you want to kind of answer to yourself to get out there. And one of them is, what am I going to do? What do I want to do?
would you say too, like those universities are a good place to try to recruit potential employees or people to work with?
That's certainly one place, you bet. Yeah, that's one place. There's a few job agencies. I don't know if that's the right word to call them, but groups that promote people into jobs. So people can both look there for work, but also look for people who are looking for work. And in particularly, this is one of the things I've said before to a few of my friends, is that you have two options when you hire people. You can hire people with experience who know what they're doing, hopefully. We're trained by someone who knows what they're doing, hopefully, so that the habits that they've established and protocols they use actually are effective. And hopefully bring them in and go, okay, here's our way. Or you can start with somebody who's never done this before and say, okay, here's an empty vessel. Let me fill you with how we do it. This is how we do this here. And sometimes an empty vessel is easier to fill than one that's already full. Sometimes the people have already got habits. This is how I do it. This is how I cut clones. Well, I've been cutting clones since maybe 45 years or more. And you know what? I talked to a guy the other day, and he showed me a new way of cutting clones that I was really impressed with. And now that's how I'm going to cut clones all the time, until somebody else shows me a better way. Uh, so the other side of that, you still have to be open at all stages to learning. And that's what you want to see in that new person, is that they have the ability to learn and they're actually willing to do that.
Oh, of
That's a
course.
big thing.
I think that's with anything too. Like you have to, it's always like constant learning process. If that going with that mindset, you're going to be successful. Yep. And any other things you want to cover as well too?
Oh, geez, there's millions.
I know, yeah, we covered a lot too with the whole growing process. Like interesting to learn about how you've been doing this for 40 plus years. Like, so yeah, you're a true veteran.
Well, I had somebody call me an expert the other day, and I'm not comfortable with that. Again, with the attitude that uh, my dad used to say, you should learn till the day you die. In fact, the day you die, you should learn something, even that day. And he said that to me. He was an irrigation engineer, and he felt that that was kind of the mark of a true professional. I'd rather use that word than an expert. Was that continued interest in learning every opportunity they got, even from somebody who's never done this before, could walk in the door and go, "Hey, Russ, have you ever tried this?" And just completely blow your mind. And if you're open to it, one of two things can happen. If you're open to it, you can go, "Wow, we should talk about this. Let's figure this out. Let's see if it works. Let's try this." Or you can be that guy who's been doing it forever and is so set in his ways. And I know lots of these guys too. They're so set in their ways, like, I don't have time for that. This is how we do it. This is how everything works. We have SOPs. Go by them. Shut up. I've seen that response too. And every once in a while, the guys who do that miss a big opportunity to find an improvement in some methodology, whether it's as simple as a new way to cut clones, a new way to feed, a new way to clean drip lines. I don't know, something. Keep our eyes and ears open every minute of our day in this industry.
Ah, gotcha. That all makes sense. So, and another thing I was gonna say too, like how could people get hold of you too if they want to, if whether it's a customer they're looking to get consulting on how to grow operations and so on.
I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook. Uh, yeah, that's about it.
Oh, cool.
I, I haven't really spent a lot of effort and time on putting myself in front of people through advertising or anything like that. Most of the work I've gotten over the last 20 years has just been through word of mouth. People know me and call me up and say, "I heard about this project." In fact, how I got into it here in Colorado was a fellow named Richard Rose, who's been in this industry longer than I have, phoned me up one day and said, "Hey, Russ, I'm hearing that there's guys in Longmont who want to build a tissue culture lab." I said, "Well, I've never done anything like that before." And it's like, "Well, neither have they, so maybe you should help them out." Uh, and when I got down there, the first time I said to him is that, "Guys, you don't have time to build a tissue culture lab and set this up to put in the ground this year. Well, you've got mother plants. Let's just cut clones." And and lo and behold, they actually listened and did exactly that and put 100,000 clones in the field that year. That if we'd been involved in a tissue culture, would not have happened that year. There's no
Oh,
way.
wow.
But
Oh,
again, going back to that, you could put a plan in place, but be open to listen to what's actually going on.
oh, of course. Have you noticed too? I'm curious, out of curiosity, have you noticed the difference in the quality of the plants in British Columbia versus in places like Colorado and California?
Well, you know what? Let's uh, let's change the label and say we're talking about dentists. Okay,
Yep.
there are dentists who hurt me so bad that I wanted to just hit them with a hammer when I left. Because it, and there are other dentists who did the exact same thing, but were concerned about what they were doing. I typically take more painkillers than most people because of some reaction I have to it. And typically, I can feel everything. When a dentist works on me, I can feel everything that's going on. They give me the second shot, I don't feel a thing. But Okay, so let's take that same analogy and throw it into growers. In British Columbia, there are growers that are everything from the absolute worst you've ever seen, who couldn't grow a plant enough to make me even realize it was a marijuana or a hemp plant. And there are growers there that are so good at what they do that I feel humbled every time I talk to them. Same in Washington, same in Colorado, California. Everywhere I go, there's a very broad spectrum of growers who range from I have no idea what I'm doing to I'm teaching the world how to do this, and everywhere in between. So if you ask me specifically about geographic regions, there's a lot of really good growers in the province of British Columbia. Some of them who I met in the 70s who were Americans who had gone up into the Slocan Valley up by Nelson as draft dodgers, pardon the terminology, and couldn't work legally in our system up there because they were Americans and had to find a way to generate revenue. And those were some of the first people I ever met that grew at scale and taught me how to grow, how to cut clones, how to put tin cans with a rock in them on fish line all around your grow. So when somebody comes on them, you can hear the fish, you can hear the beer can, sorry, not a fish can, a beer can with a rock in it. So you can hear people if they come into the place, night or day, things like that. Yeah. But to pinpoint a specific geographic and say that they're all good or all bad, there's lots of good growers. You know, Humboldt County, some of the best growers in the world come from there. Some of the, Slocan Valley, Nelson, the Kootenay Mountains, some of the best growers in British Columbia or Canada, period, come from there. So, and yet here in Colorado, some of the best indoor growers in greenhouses I've ever seen. Some of the most incredible greenhouse operations in Colorado and California of scale that as a kid, I didn't even know existed. I didn't even know that kind of stuff was going on. So yeah, it's hard for me to pinpoint those are good guys in this place and those are not so much.
If you had to guess too, if like who's going to be like the next state that's going to be on par with Colorado and California, who would you say is going to be heading that direction?
Wow, there's a lot, man. If you're looking at just hemp, there's a lot of East Coast stuff going on, Virginia, Tennessee, Kentucky, etc. But I also see Montana, New Mexico, I think just legalized yesterday
Yes,
or
they
the day
did.
before. And typically what happens sometimes is when a new state legalizes, there's kind of a flood of people end up there. And it's not that they deplete the state that they come from or the place that they come from, but as new states come on board, they're looking for people to help them. They want people with experience because they want to flick the switch and go. They don't have time to train people in a lot of cases. So yeah, a lot of the newer states, you might find kind of go through a flash phase. New York will go through this, and they have a lot of money and a lot of buyers there. So I think we'll see. I don't know about quality, but I think as far as quantity and getting into the business, I'm hoping the quality will soon follow. As each state opens up, we'll see. But there seems to be that trend that the states that are opening up now have been watching the other states. So instead of fumbling down the road, they're trying to learn from others' mistakes. If that
Oh
makes
yeah,
sense.
yeah. But there could be cases too where like when Colorado first legalized it, a lot of people wanted to move there to go in the industry and they found their way. But then as soon as their state they're originally from legalizes, they'll probably go back for that market too, knowing
Sure.
what they know from what they learn in like Colorado or California.
And when they go back there, even with a year or two's experience in Colorado, California, or somewhere that's been doing it for a while, when they go back there, they're not quite the one-eyed man in the land of the blind, but it's along that pathway where someone with a couple of years of working with the right people can make a huge impact on a new state that's opening,
Yeah,
and helping people on the right path.
because like I know New York's market's supposed to be huge, supposed to be like 7 billion.
I was reading about that. If people were wanting to to look at a state that's probably going to go full tilt, that's the state. I can see that. Just flick the switch and go
Yeah.
hard.
Well, it's like yeah, like a lot of people moved into NYC for like career stuff too, but maybe that'll be another pathway for people to start a career. Could be in that space too.
Well, we'll see. We'll see. I don't. I've never been to. I think I flew over New York on the way to Boston and on the way to Poland and a few things, but I've never been to New York. I don't know anything about it, so I have limited capacity to make any comment whatsoever.
Oh no, no, I think New York's a good place. That New York City's fun. There's a lot of stuff to do there.
That's what I've heard
Yeah,
and seen, on TV.
I know it's. Oh yeah, North Carolina. Like I saw they just
Yeah,
introduced the medical bill as well too. I wonder they border Virginia, so like I wouldn't surprise me if they passed that either.
we're seeing even Texas just recently it pushed on their medical bill, expanded it a little bit. I don't know how recreational will go in Texas. Don't know much about Texas either. Only been there a couple times, but there's a lot of serious hemp research going on there. Very focused on the industrial side, uh, and that they're doing trials down there. And I see big things happening in Texas. I've
Yeah,
talked to a lot of the people down there, and they're on it.
because I know a lot of the oil industry was hit hard last year, so the people who lost their jobs in oil, they can go into cannabis.
We'll see how that actually works out.
Yeah.
It's a different skill sets. And frankly, with the price of oil going back up again right now, with a few of the refineries being down, we may find that a lot of people who got laid off in the oil industry in the last year or two, if oil, if oil goes back above 50, $70 a barrel, wherever it is, I don't pay much attention anymore, but I know gas is going up. So at some point, uh, they'll probably start hiring. So not sure. Couldn't really comment on that. I think a lot of people will just go right back to gas and oil because it pays so well.
No, yeah, I think yeah, probably. But even Texas is such a big state too. Like there's a it has a different diverse population. So you have like in Austin, Texas, for example, feels more like you're in a San Francisco or a hip city.
Sure. Yeah.
That's
But
like
I don't know how that will impact their industry down there. I, they're kind of going through establishment pains and stretches right now.
oh yeah, that's right. So oh, what about Florida? I think Florida would be a big state if they were to legalize it too.
I've talked to a lot of people in Florida the last few weeks, maybe a few months actually, last 3 or 4 months. And Florida's an interesting state. Uh, one of the fellows I was talking to told me that unlike a lot of states, they have a 1 day window for harvest. So, here in Colorado, I think we have a 10-day window unless it's changed. And we would give them a range of time because we don't know when we're going to harvest. We want to, and
Mhm.
we want to tell the state, but having a few days to say, well, we think it's going to be somewhere right here, and we'll let you know the day we harvest or before that. In Florida, you got a 1 day window, and you got to tell them that on your application. That's going to be difficult for a lot of people, particularly if they're nervous about their product going hot. What if you need to harvest early? Can you actually do that? And I don't know, but it certainly it certainly makes you wonder how things will go if people's product CBD starts to get high THC numbers, and they can tell by its progression by the time that they get to harvest day, they're going to be in trouble. I don't know how they're going to handle that if they have the ability to apply for a secondary window or something of that nature. But interesting stuff going
Yeah,
on there.
I'm looking at the Midwest too, because a lot of those states grow corn and other crops too, so they might be another hotbed for.
They are.
Yeah.
They are. The Midwest Hemp Council and a couple of other groups out there are getting good footholds. They're starting to get people who know what they're doing, which is awesome. And frankly, if the model that I talked about earlier happens over the long term, which is the grain in CBD and fiber in CBD, those states are particularly set up to fulfill that requirement. because of what they do right now. They already are row croppers. They already have great soil. And in fact, in a lot of places like Iowa, I don't think I saw a pivot or an irrigation system in the entire state of Iowa when I was there. And that takes a lot out of it, because here in Colorado, half our state's under drought conditions.
Hmm.
Uh, so, so everything needs water. Every crop has pivots or some type of irrigation. So yeah, I see the Midwest as Kansas, Missouri, Iowa, Nebraska, Indiana, all these states. They already have all the tools they need. They have the land they need. They have the rainfall they need, sometimes a little too much. Uh, but yeah, I see long term farmers putting hemp into their crop cycles just as normally as you would put tomatoes and onions and whatever in your garden as anything else as part
So
of their rotation.
actually, I did speak with somebody earlier. Like, an interview is going to be up possibly later today, but she works for a company that was producing regular produce, and not too long ago they transitioned into hemp as well too. So they have a whole division with that too. So we're going to be seeing a lot of companies doing something similar to that, and they're in the Midwest as well too.
Sure. Yeah, I could see it. Like if you were growing produce, I don't think I would be that guy that abandoned my produce production. I think I would do both and see, what are the buyers like? For example, growing produce, you have competition, but if you go to the grocery, if you have a specific buyer traditionally, and he says he will buy X amount of your produce after harvest, you can probably rely on that happening.
Hmm.
And right now, if you're a hemp grower, that's not written in stone yet. That's not a guaranteed 100%. If that guy says he's buying my product at the end of the year, that he's buying it. So I think once that gets established and the buyers show continuity season to season, through a couple of seasons, you could kind of take away that mystery and negative potential. Uh, so yeah, I could see guys in produce because they're kind of already on the CBD horticulture side, uh, and I could also see guys who grow wheat and corn and doing it as a crop rotation, growing hemp in that same spot next year, and the other side is organic. If you're an organic vegetable producer and you're going to grow hemp organically, there's guys in New Mexico and Arizona right now who are experimenting with hemp greens instead of having alfalfa sprouts or bean sprouts. What's wrong with hemp sprouts?
Oh no, yeah.
They grow the same. We can grow them just as fast. And if we can get down to the taste and people say, yeah, we like that taste, which cultivar and which nutrients to establish that taste and everything, they're doing trials with that, right? Taste trials right now.
Oh
And,
wow.
and, but, it's not going to happen tomorrow, but it's in progress.
Oh, of course. Do you think that's possible too? That from like they can make bread from hemp as well too?
Well, I know you can make bread from hemp. Uh, whether it will sell or not, to be honest, I don't know. I think it will. Uh, there are people out there saying they can make flour from hemp, and I've seen that. And if you have flour, you can, with the right ingredients, you can make bread. It all comes down to two people like it. Do you like the taste of this bread? Does it taste like sand, or does it taste like vanilla, or does it taste like bread? So that's going to be on the food side. If it doesn't taste good, unless it's really good for you, people aren't going to buy it.
Oh yeah, because because I know because cannabis and hemp is related to so many industries as well too. Which industry you think is going to see the biggest positive impact from the further legalization?
Hmm. I'm not sure. When you say further legalization, are
I
you
meant like
are you?
let's say every state legalizes. Once every state is legal.
I don't know what to say on that. If I'm looking at the hemp side, um, just most states. I mean, we're pretty much we've gone past the tipping point. Uh, so the feedback I guess I'm seeing is that if you can find a product that people like, I think there's going to be a number of pathways that open up very quickly. I think the problem with fiber is we don't have a textile industry in America. It was exported when we signed NAFTA a few decades back. So we don't have an existing textile industry to just flood with hemp, or sorry, with fiber. However, we're seeing in several states very positive responses for animal feed with hemp. We're seeing grain for human consumption on an uptake. And I think if we can find non-woven uses for fiber, which we are, particularly in the insulation, right? Sprayed insulation and a few other things, hempcrete, etc. So there's lots of venues. It's really going to depend on consumers, where they put their money. I know a chef in the state of Washington who cooks entire meals with nothing, well, not nothing, but with marijuana or hemp in every dish, whether it's soup or meat dishes or whatever. So I think people are opening up to looking at it as a food source. It existed, but it didn't expand. But I think that will expand as products come out of the food side.
Hmm.
But I think, yeah, fiber is going to have a big impact in the next couple of years. The grain, I think it will grow a little slower. I think there's just a lot of buzz right now about fiber. I don't think CBD is going away anywhere soon as a product. In fact, I'm seeing more products being introduced. Skincare products. Frankly, I'm surprised the perfume industry hasn't taken more interest in our concept that we grow plants with a lot of terpenes, a very broad spectrum of terpenes. And considering the cost of perfume, I'm astounded that the perfume or fashion industry, wherever they're categorized as, haven't looked at us a little more closer.
Well, so that's interesting to know. Like you brought that up.
Well, terpene production is what, the hops people, that's what they're all about. So I don't quite understand why the people in the scent/fragrance industry haven't looked at us a little more, but maybe they don't know. Maybe they have no idea that we're doing this.
Or maybe they're just set on their ways too. It could be one of those situations that you
Sure,
mentioned earlier.
established sources, established, from beginning to end, they have nothing but money that they're making. So yeah, I could see that. But if you could find out that when someone harvests say 1,000 acres of biomass, that somewhere in that biomass would be some samples to try out, because biomass isn't expensive to buy right now. There's a lot of people who would almost give it away for free to get it off their property. And yes, I'm exaggerating a bit, but there's no lack of samples to do experiments and trials on.
I got it. So this was a great conversation. Like you learn all about all the different parts of the industry. It was awesome. You're more than welcome to be on for future interviews. If you have any last words, just please, say something too, whether it's any advice for people going in the industry again, or just for those who want to continue to have success, feel free.
Sure. If you're going to look at this industry as a career path or as a investment business path, find something you know a little bit about as a start point. That'll be helpful. But you really need to want to be in this business. You want to have some kind of passion or connection with the concept that this is a plant that's been around for forever. It's been utilized forever all over the world. And we've had just a short in the history of time exit from that concept. We've been back in it for a few years. The industry is still developing. I would say it is on the growth cycle to be very huge. But at the same time, the minute somebody hands you a pair of those rosy colored glasses, throw them on the ground and stomp them into pieces. It takes hard work. This is not a flashy, business. There's lots of flash in it, but if you want to be in it, it takes hard work and commitment. And if you put those things in, there's people in here getting rewarded for that kind of commitment, passion for their industry, and passion for the plant. I think
Awesome. So,
that's.
yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying. I think that probably holds true in every business, but this is the one I'm in, so I feel it here the most. If you love this plant and want to grow it, you're welcome. You're welcome here. There's room for you.
Awesome. So yeah, Henry here signing off. Again, it was great to have you, and you're more than welcome to be back on future interviews.
You bet. Thank you, Henry.
Yep.